regular meeting. I'd like to start off by having the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So if you're just coming in, I would like to have a copy of the agenda. They are on the back wall for you to review. And on the back of the agenda is a summary of our public comment regulations in terms of how you might, sorry, this is for the resolution, I apologize. Hopefully most of you will read along so I don't have to go through the whole thing, but public comment regulations. Residents and taxpayers of the township and visitors may make comments to the board after a motion has been made and seconded on an item or official action will be taken, but before a vote on that motion by the board. Comments by any one individual shall be limited to 2 minutes, unless at the discretion of the chair, the speaker is granted more time by way of the chair outlet. So if there is someone on the board who would like to hear more from that speaker, they may grant them time. The Board of Supervisors reserves the right not to engage in a dialogue with a commenter, including the right not to engage in a question and answer session on matters on which a motion has been made. Comments are encouraged to be declaratory in nature and not interrogatory. Comments by members of the public on items which are not on the agenda, in order to allow members of the board, residents and taxpayers of the township and visitors may make comments on items that are not on the agenda at the conclusion of the board's meeting during the public comment, which you'll see at the bottom of the agenda. Individuals who wish to provide public comment shall be required to sign in before the meeting, meaning we need to know your name and address. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. It's not the letter B. Okay. Okay, there they are. Should be signed in before the meeting, and their comments will be heard in the order that their names appear in the sign-in sheet. Comments by any one individual shall be limited to 2 minutes, unless at the discretion of the chair, the speaker is granted more time. The chair and the other board members. The Board of Supervisors reserves the right not to engage in a dialogue with a commenter, including the right not to engage in a question and answer session on matters not on the agenda. Comments are encouraged to be declaratory in nature and not interrogatory. No individual shall make offensive, insulting, threatening, insolent, slanderous, or obscene remarks, or act in a boisterous manner, or make threats against any person or against public order and security. If an individual shall refuse to yield the floor when their allotted time has expired, or refuse to adhere to the protocols of decorum and order by yelling or commenting when they have not been recognized by the board chair to speak, he or she shall be asked to leave the meeting by the board chair, and if necessary, be removed by the sergeant at arms, who shall be a township police officer present at each meeting. Thank you for bearing with me on that. The next item is to announce that audience members may be audio or video recorded by third parties during this public meeting, and we record these meetings every month on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to take a little bit of a digression from number 4 before we get to number 5. During the 6 o'clock meeting, we had a special board meeting related to the budget so that we could adopt the budget. Mr. Pielli participated as a voting member of our current board, and at the end of the meeting, he shared with us his resignation as a township supervisor. As many of you know or may know, Mr. Pielli ran and won a position in Chester County as the Chester County Recorder of Deeds. He wrote his letter and said essentially quite simply, "Dear Casey, please accept this letter of my official notice of resignation as a West Goshen Township Supervisor effective December 17, 2019 at or about 7 p.m. after the 2020 budget meeting. I thank you all for your help and support during my years of service to the board and the residents of West Goshen Township. Sincerely, Chris Pielli." That is the reason why his seat is empty for this evening. So I'm going to add another announcement as a result of his resignation, effective immediately. The township is going to post on its social media platforms, including its website and through its Facebook page, specifically to seek candidates who may be interested in fulfilling the 2 years that are left on Mr. Paley's tenure as a supervisor. That information will be posted on Thursday, possibly tomorrow. Oh, you can do it tomorrow? Okay, great. With information on how you can apply for that position.
Ms. Chairman, the board needs to accept his resignation to Mr. O'Connor.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to now have, well,
Just a
we're,
question for you.
yes,
So so we're going to post the request for applicants on the social media page, the website, Facebook page. Is there a deadline by which people need to respond by?
yes, because we are working with a vacancy issue in terms of his date of departure as a resignation, we are going to have a special meeting at which point we will appoint based upon the resumes that we each have a chance to review and make an appointment or make a recommendation for the appointment. So at the moment, I was suggesting we have the applicants apply up to January 10th for a potential January 13th special meeting. And if necessary due to potential weather, we talked about having the rest of those business days available up until
January 16th is your 30-day absolute deadline, and
Okay.
it goes to the vacancy board.
Okay.
So we'll advertise for the 13th as the meeting.
Mhm.
I'll advertise that in the paper, and then January 10th is the deadline for resumes to meet. Okay.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk about item number 5? Is that Ryan?
Yes.
Sure, thank you. Item number 5 on this evening's agenda being the Board of Supervisors conditional use hearing for proposed Truemark Financial Bank, 704 East Market Street, by applicant 704 East Market Street Associates LP. Let's open the record for the public hearing this evening. The Board of Supervisors is in receipt of a conditional use application dated October 29th, 2019, filed with the Township on November 5th, 2019, of applicant 704 East Market Street Associates LP. The subject properties involved with the application are 700 East Market Street and 11 South Bolmar Street, Westchester, PA. Tax parcel ID numbers 52-5F-87 and 52-5F-86, which are located in the Township's C5 General Highway Commercial Zoning District. Specifically, the applicant seeks approval pursuant to Zoning Ordinance Section 84-32N5 to redevelop the site and construct a Truemark Financial Credit Union with associated improvements consisting of 2,600 square foot building with 14 attendant parking spaces. The applicant intends to demolish and replace all existing buildings currently on the subject properties. Upon receipt of the application, the board, in accordance with the timing requirements of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, is timely convening tonight's public hearing. However, the applicant has requested a continuance to a subsequent hearing date for purposes of having the Township's Planning Commission review the application and provide a recommendation to this board as to the sufficiency and adequacy of the application. In that regard, the applicant, by letter dated today, December 17th, 2019, has requested that the matter be opened as we are on the record and immediately thereafter continued without any substantive proceedings occurring. The applicant has appropriately granted the board an extension of time in which the township will have to commence a hearing on the application, thereby waiving the PA MPC 60-day requirement. The board and the parties have collected unanimously decided to reschedule the hearing to January 21st, 2020 at approximately 7 p.m. As a matter of housekeeping, because this hearing was opened tonight, the matter will not be, nor does it need to be re-advertised by letter or in newspaper print, as it was previously done in accordance with Pennsylvania law. With that all said, we'll now call a recess on the public hearing until January 21st, 2020. Close the record for now.
Okay, turn to item number 6. Discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 11-2019, amending the township zoning ordinance, chapter 84, to create a new R3C residential
Bill District.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will now open a new public record for this evening's second public hearing. This one not requiring the court reporter. This evening we'll conduct a second public hearing as part of the regularly advertised public meeting to consider the adoption of amendments to the provisions of the West Goshen Township Code, namely the Township Zoning Ordinance, that being Chapter 84, as well as the Township's zoning map. I need to read the title and summary of the proposed ordinance text and map amendments, so please bear with me here. An ordinance of the Township of West Goshen, Chester County, Pennsylvania, amending the West Goshen Township Revised Zoning Ordinance of 1990 as amended, which is codified in Chapter 84 of the West Goshen Township Code, as well as the West Goshen Township Zoning Map, to create a new R-3C residential infill district, and to rezone certain parcels more particularly identified on the revised zoning map and list of properties attached to this ordinance to R-3C, and to establish use regulations, area and bulk regulations, and design standards for properties in the R-3C district. By way of ordinance amendment and introduction, the zoning ordinance text and map amendments have been before this board on a few prior occasions, in those instances for discussion purposes only. As the title suggests, the amendments would create a new R-3C residential infill district, as is depicted up on the projector, whereby rezoning would apply to residential parcels. As I explained here publicly back in October, it's always a desired zoning objective and practice to avoid and to correct existing zoning nonconformities. This rezoning allows for an opportunity to correct some of those nonconformities because a vast majority of the parcels in this particular R3 zoned district are nonconforming in nature. For example, R3 zoning requires 18,000 to 30,000 square foot minimum lot sizes, whereby many of the identified properties, as are being depicted on the projection, are significantly nonconforming, being approximately 10 and 11,000 square feet in area. These amendments would reduce area and bulk limitations on these specific residents, whereby setbacks and impervious coverage requirements and limitations would be less taxing on those property owners, potentially alleviating the need to appear before the Township Zoning Hearing Board seeking relief by way of variance. The rezoning initiative was spearheaded by Accolade, with representatives here this evening who are interested in redeveloping their parcel located in this zoning district, specifically at 325 North Five Points Road. Many of you may recall that Accolade initially proposed a by-right plan involving residential lots as well as a daycare use. It has since come back with a revised plan involving residential lots. We've previously heard from attorneys John Jaros and Deborah Schultzke on this matter, and Mr. Jaros is here this evening should anyone have questions specifically directed toward Accolade. Before we move on, I would like to point out that, and I think it's important to note that this hearing involves a rezoning of the identified properties. This hearing does not involve any sort of land development approval for the Accolade project. It simply would allow, if adopted by the board, Accolade the opportunity to apply for land development approval. Again, such approval would not be granted by this board tonight. By way of hearing exhibits, I have 9, which I'd like to introduce and admit into the hearing record. I, again, need to identify them by name and number, so please bear with me. B1 being a proof of publication in the Daily Local News on November 26th and December 3rd, 2019. Exhibit B2, a letter dated November 15th to the Chester County Law Library, providing the proposed ordinance amendments for public inspection. Exhibit B3, a letter of that same date to the Daily Local News, providing the proposed ordinance amendments for public inspection. Exhibit B4, an affidavit of mailing dated November 15th, 2019. Exhibit B5, an affidavit of posting dated December 4th, 2019. Exhibit B6, the West Goshen Township Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 8th, 2019. Exhibit B7, the Chester County Planning Commission's review letter dated October 25th, 2019. Exhibit B8, an email dated October 18th, 2019 from Township Manager Casey Lalonde regarding trip generation. And lastly, Exhibit B9, a letter dated November 1st, 2019 from Traffic Engineer Frank Tavani regarding trip generation investigation. With all of that said, I'd ask if there are any comments or questions from members of the board.
With respect to the trip information, has that been made public already? I don't recall if we discussed it yet.
I believe we were waiting until the hearing next
No,
week.
okay. Just to make sure that's been discussed. Thank you.
So I know it's only a hearing to look at the zoning tonight. One of the things that came up at the conversations previously was around the traffic issues associated with 5 Points Road and Isabel, and the proposed development under the R3C designation, and the number of properties and the traffic increase. And we'd asked Chief Police and then the Traffic Safety Unit to look into accident history at Isabel, the 5 Points. Is that part of this information that's being released to date, or is that to come as part of the land development process?
Additional traffic analysis would be performed under the land development process. What is incorporated into this hearing record by way of Exhibits B8 and B9 are initially Rick Craig's analysis as to the 2 scenarios of traffic generation. That's Exhibit B8, and then B9 being the Frank Tavani and Associates analysis. And I can read from those exhibits specifically to provide a summary of those 2 gentlemen's analysis.
I think that'll be useful.
Sure, certainly. Here's one.
Okay, previously the Board of Supervisors have requested that our township engineer, who's absent tonight, do a, not obviously a full traffic study because that comes during land development, but a trip generation analysis from his perspective using the Institute of Traffic Engineers Trip Generation Manual 9th edition. That's what traffic engineers use based on uses to come up with trip generation. So I will read the email and you want to take over for the...
Sure.
Okay. And this was to staff and some board members. Good morning. Using the Institute of Traffic Engineers ITE Trip Generation Manual 9th edition, Rick Craig, again our township engineer, analyzed 2 scenarios for vehicle trip generation at the Discovery Daycare Center property. Both the by right plan, which is 4 homes plus the existing daycare, and 6 apartments. Those are existing. and the proposed change to the 11 single-family homes. As the trip generation formula shows, the by right use will generate more cars on a daily basis. Please contact us with any questions. That's dated Friday, October 18th.
Sure. With regard to Exhibit B9, again, that's the Frank Tavani and Associates. They are a traffic engineering and planning outfit. They also analyzed this as were requested by the township. There are various tables within their it's approximately a 10-page submission. There's a trip generation table titled By Right Components, a trip generation table titled Current Proposal, as well as a summary table. I think it will be beneficial just to read the summary portion of the report. Mr. Tavani notes, in summary, the currently proposed plan will reduce traffic in the community. Specifically, the currently proposed plan will generate 42 fewer trips during the typical weekday commuter AM peak hour and 40 fewer trips during the typical weekday commuter PM peak hour. I hope this has been helpful. Please let me know if I can answer any questions.
And Mr. Craig kind of went from a slightly different perspective. He looked at an entire day, an average work day, as opposed to Mr. Tavani, who looked at it strictly peak morning and peak afternoon rush. So let me give you the results that Mr. Craig found using the ITE manual. The by right plan, again, it's the 6 existing apartments, the existing 1,000 square foot daycare, 4 proposed residential lots, 6 apartments, average 6.65 trips per day, so he rounds up to 7 trips a day. A daycare center of that size will produce 74 trips a day. So he rounds down to the nearest of 74 trips. 4 proposed residential lots average about 10 trips a day. So using those calculations, for a normal day, a normal Tuesday in March, there would be an average of 156 trips per day, which with the existing daycare, the 6 apartments, and proposed by right plan of 4 homes. With the RC3 plan, there will be 11 residential lots. The daycare goes away, the apartments go away at 10 trips a day for a total of 110 trips a day. So there's a reduction in trips of 46 per day on an average Tuesday in number of trips on a daily basis.
So just one comment on that. So the by right plan with the daycare apartments and additional single-family homes, those trips would essentially be on 5 Points Road in terms of an entrance and exit, versus the proposed 11 single-family homes. Currently, the developer proposed it being onto Isabel Lane, correct?
That is correct.
Thanks.
Are there any additional questions from members of the board? At this time, we can take questions from members of the public as it pertains to the ordinance amendments.
I probably can first. Please come up and state your name and address.
Are you saying that?
Sir, you need to come up. Okay. Yeah, we're televising the meeting, so we can. And everybody who comes up to the podium, please give me your first and last name, no addresses, just first and last name, so I can get it for the record.
Theodore Robbins. I live on 547 Richmond Road. I've been in the township for 40 years. Okay, my one comment is on the light system you have on 5 Points and Paley Pike. If you're heading north on Paley Pike, to make a left, like heading towards West Goshen Shopping Center, there's no turn signal there. So basically, you're stuck waiting until all the cars come across. So is that going to be looked into?
Separately, apart from this application, I have asked Rick Craig to have a third-party engineering firm to look at that exact question, totally apart from this, to add a left turn lane, left turn arrow. My office overlooks that intersection. I see every year hundreds of, I'm not kidding you, hundreds of near misses and accidents.
Well, yeah, the same thing right up front. We're also going the opposite direction on 5 points going
Sure.
across.
We will most likely hit the warrants necessary from PennDOT to add that left turn arrow, but we should be receiving that report back in the next couple of weeks. And we have money in the budget next year for traffic signal improvements, so if that happens, and we can ask for PennDOT approval for a left turn arrow, so that should alleviate traffic.
Okay, so right now, we're just talking about the traffic right now. We're not talking about the buildings you're building, right?
That happens during land development at a later time.
Okay. That was one of my questions, was the traffic. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, Mr. Paul.
Thank you very much. John Poth. No address. So I think some of the concerns, I guess all of us in this room have, we talked, and we'll get to the traffic thing a little bit, because that's the first time I ever heard about the traffic study, I guess, or the traffic report. I think one of our concerns is reducing the square footage down to 10,000 square feet, and then having the potential of somebody purchasing 2 properties, which could conceivably equal 30,000 square feet, and build 3 homes where there were 2. So I think that's and it may not be a big issue, but it seems like now it's a doable issue if we do the rezoning. The other thing I think the township was looking at, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, is to get everything all lined up. Like we're all out of compliance, so to speak, or we're non-conforming lots. And to change the zoning now to R3C would then allow it to be, quote, conforming. Mr. Webb, I asked you about this last time, and I think you said you were here for 5 years, and you've only had 3 times when you've had any issues with zoning variances. Is that a correct statement?
I believe it was 3, yes.
3. So I don't know if the zoning variance thing is a real issue, and I think that can be corrected just by having a zoning amendment. So we'll keep, keeping the same zoning that it is now, the R3, and just putting in a zoning amendment, maybe eliminating the fee that is required for to go for the variance. But it could be something that simple rather than rezoning everything. The traffic, I'm still a little bit concerned about the traffic report. It seems to me now, is the daycare currently operating right now?
No,
It's not operating. Okay. So when was it last operating? It's been a while.
She does, in the summertime, she has summer
no,
camps.
yeah, that's true. She has summer camp in the summertime, but full-blown daycare, probably a few years.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, and again, I don't know if this has been a big factor, but I haven't seen a big problem with the daycare, frankly, with traffic when it is operating, I guess, during the summer. And it seems to me that could be alleviated. So I don't know if that, again, is a big issue. I am concerned about traffic going on either 5 Points or Isabel Lane, and I think that is a factor. I mean, if we put new houses and more houses, it seems to me like we're going to have more traffic. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, so please come forward.
Richard Trimbicki. The last meeting we were here, you discussed bringing all the traffic onto Isabel as opposed to 5 Points Road to alleviate traffic coming out to 5 Points Road. But the numbers you just gave us said the traffic will be reduced by putting single homes in as opposed to what's there now. So if there's going to be less traffic, what's the problem with leaving it coming out on 5 Points Road as opposed to going on to Isabel, which is what we're all fighting against? Nobody in this room cares about the zoning for our houses. Doesn't do anything for us. We want the entrance and exit to this new development to come out on 5 Points Road instead of Isabel. And if you're telling me there's going to be less traffic now, leave it coming out on 5 Points Road instead of Isabel. You said it was to be done to alleviate traffic problems on 5 Points Road. You're saying now that there's less traffic due to this, so why do you need to move it? Leave it coming out on 5 Points Road. In my mind, the only reason is because you're trying to put more houses into this lot, so it comes to dollars. The residents that are already there don't want it. Put a house or 2 less where it is and leave it coming out on 5 Points Road instead of Isabel. I never heard, too, whether or not you had a report on whether or not the accidents increased, or you were going to give us a report about that. I would like to hear that. Because we had asked for that last time.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The traffic unit did conduct a traffic study for the intersection of North Five Points Road and Isabel Lane. We conducted it between October 29th and November 4th. And understand this is current and historical information. This isn't future, so I can't get into the discussion of potential increase or decrease of traffic. But the intersection itself does not have a sight distance issue. If you're coming out on Isabel, based on PennDOT's regulations, if you're looking north to your right, you have a 400-foot sight distance issue. And if you're looking south towards Route 3, you would have 575 feet of sight distance coming out from Isabel onto Five Points Road. So there's no sight distance issue there. There is also absolute, in the last 5 years, from October 29th of 2014 to October 29th of 2019, at the intersection of Five Points Road and Isabel, there have been absolutely no reportable motor vehicle accidents. And a reportable accident is an accident that either involves personal injury or damage to a vehicle to the extent that it requires towing from the scene. Non-reportable accidents are minor fender benders where you exchange information and you go on your way and let the insurance companies deal with it. We sometimes get calls for them, we sometimes do not. So in accordance with PennDOT, they don't utilize that statistical information for studies and so forth. It's strictly reportable. Obviously, the average speed of vehicles on Five Points Road is 31 miles per hour. Obviously, there's a high and low to that. The speed limit is 25. So the pace speed is anywhere from 28 to 37 miles per hour. 68% of the vehicles that travel that are within that 28 to 37 mile per hour speed limit. Obviously, we have highs and we have lows. For a 7-day period, the volume on Five Points Road went anywhere from 5,700 vehicles to 9,700 vehicles, depending on the day of the week. So it's a heavily traveled highway. Obviously, it's a cut through between two major arteries, Bailey Pike and Five Points Road, or Westchester Pike. So, but as far as the intersection itself goes, there's no statistical information that would impede the situation.
Yes, the hand in the back, please come forward.
Hi. I just wanted to I have a question. My understanding was if the zoning does not get changed, the parcel of land, I call it up top of the hill, would have to remain a daycare and apartments, because that's the way that piece is zoned. Am I correct? And then the bottom half of the property, I think they're proposing to put 5 houses on. That was my understanding. Sorry?
4 homes.
4 homes if the zoning does not get changed. If the zoning gets changed, then the daycare goes away and so do the apartments.
Correct.
Am I right? Okay. My concern is, and houses then would be smaller and the lots would be smaller. There would be more houses, but the lots would be smaller. I get concerned. I live right on Isabel, and my property backs right up to the daycare. I'm concerned that, larger houses are going to be put on there, which is going to make Suburban Village, where I live, we're going to look like we live in these little, that's my concern. I don't really want a big 3-story home next to my house. That's my opinion. Also, the daycare is not operating now, so you don't have the impact on Five Points Road. And I don't think, as I remember from the last meeting, my interpretation was you were not in favor of allowing that whole property with 11 homes on it to exit onto 5 Points. Am I right? Because that would really increase the traffic. And there was some concern about, can you put a light up somewhere, and that, I don't know, if that didn't go through. So I guess my concern is, if the zoning is not redone, you're going to have a nursery school up on the top part of the property with a lot of cars going out on the 5 Points Road, which we really don't have now because the nursery school has not really been open for 5 years. So we're not having that impact on 5 Points Road right now. If the zoning doesn't get changed, you're going to have an impact on 5 Points, which is then going to affect us trying to get out of Isabel, you know. So I don't know. I just want to make sure I've got my interpretation of this correct.
I think that you do have it correct. I think with,
Except one item.
Okay.
go ahead.
Inside the proposed ordinance, under the area and bulk requirements, the maximum height can't exceed 2 stories for the building or 30 feet.
Right,
So it can't be a 3-story.
even without the zoning change.
Well, without the zoning change, they can build.
That is, okay, that's my concern. If we don't change the zoning,
Correct.
then the pieces of property are going to be bigger, and therefore probably the houses on that piece of property would be bigger. That's a concern that I have just from a, my little tiny house being next to a development that has these big houses on it. I mean, it's only maybe 4 or 5 houses, but still, that's going to kind of surround us, and that's people's impression that they're going to get from 5 Points Road of our development. That's my thought. I personally would rather see smaller homes and smaller lots that would be more in keeping with our homes that are existing now. And I think some of the homes closer to the high school are bigger than ours, but there's such a distance, I don't think there's not going to be a comparison. I don't know. Anyway, that's my thought.
Thank you for
So, okay, thank you.
Come forward, Mr. Allen. Oh,
You can go.
he's done.
You can go.
Okay.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry, I heard call your name first. You're next.
Michael Andrian, Veronica Road. I'm concerned about the taking away of some of the ancillary uses that are available for the properties there. And says that these new uses may be used for any of the following purposes and for no other. That no other does not exist under the current zoning R3.
Sir, are you referring to the ordinance itself, or?
No, well, this is the original, yes, and for no other.
Okay.
It seemed to be taking away some of the previously permitted uses that would have been available under a special exception. Now, am I mistaken here?
No, sir.
It doesn't change anything in regards to that?
No, sir.
That's my mistake.
No, the focus.
Yeah, I understand the focus is on that, but it seems to be affecting the other properties in regards to special exception uses.
Doesn't change anything, right?
Okay, good enough.
Sir.
Mr. Herman, you were next, and then I see your hand go back. Sit down. Yeah, he had his hand up earlier, and then you can come up. Thank you.
John Hellman, West Goshen. I serve on the Planning Commission, folks, and we talked about this proposed ordinance back in October. And this is before we had the information here about the traffic study which you folks had done. We weren't aware of that. The feeling, just to try to give you some idea of what the feeling was on the board. The board was kind of split on this. Even though the majority did vote to recommend to the Board of Supervisors to adopt, there were a couple of folks who dissented, and I was one of them, mainly because of concerns over the traffic congestion that the change to the R3C would entail. Going from 5 homes, which would be allowed currently under built right, to 11 homes seemed to me, just by the math, it would result in more traffic along Isabel there and Five Points Road. The traffic study I'm hearing is saying otherwise, but be that as it may, I still would have a concern about that. We seem to be creating these magnets in our township where we're just building things where people are gravitating towards, creating a lot of congestion. The Wawa there used to be, a Chevrolet dealer, for example. Now when you got a Wawa there, a CVS, and a bank. So we got a lot of traffic just being attracted to 5 Points there and Route 3. And this development here would, I think, would just add to that. So that was my concern. And others as well. There's no component for affordable housing here. I know one of the folks who used to live in the apartments, no longer living there, living in his van, for example. So that's another issue, which is not even being addressed here by this change in the R3C proposed ordinance. And then also there was another concern raised by others on the board about no resulting change in any traffic signals as a result of this change that this could bring about. So that just want to give a little bit of an idea of where the Planning Commission folks were coming from. And then on the other hand, if we did bring about this change, it would eliminate the need for a lot of folks who live in the area now to have to go through the zoning board if they wanted to build a deck or something like that. And I get that. I mean, why have to go through all that? So if we can make a change to make it easier for folks living there now, that would be the right thing to do. And so I almost kind of wish we could separate the two, but unfortunately we can't. But anyway, I just want to give you a little bit insight about where the Planning Commission is coming from. Kind of like a split bag there. All right.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barney Andrian. We used to own that property at the nursing, at the daycare, way back when before the Depression hit. Okay, so I just want to let you know that those apartments are over 100 years old. Okay, so when we were here the last time at the township thing, you were talking about the historic and not tearing down old buildings. And if you do change it, and that means you'll be tearing down old buildings over 100 years old. Just wanted to let you know that they are over 100 years old.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Dr. White? No?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug White, West Goshen Township, also on the Planning Commission. John, thank you for your comments. There's a lot of folks here who are concerned one way or the other about what's going to happen. One concern that was raised was if a precedent would be set here by, if we allow this to happen, then other builders might come to the township and say, well, let's change the zoning here and get more density. Sometimes we do change zoning, sometimes we get more density, but usually we get something back from the builder that would benefit the township. So there's concerns about that. And I did agree with John's idea about fixing the zoning hearing board issues in suburban village separately. Maybe somehow keeping it R3, but waiving some of these ZHP. I know Bill's saying that you can't do that. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. But I trust that whatever the board does will have the best interest of the township and give everybody their chance to voice their opinions. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments in the audience? Please start come up.
Mark Perfetto, West Goshen. We're seeing what the size of houses, do you know what the building envelope is, what they'd be able to contain in those? Okay, again, maximum height 2 stories not to exceed 30 feet. Minimum building setback from the street right of way 30 feet. Minimum side yard 10 feet, 25 aggregate. Minimum rear yard 20 feet. minimum green area per lot is 50%. Maximum lot coverage is 25%.
The square footage of it.
Well, the lots are 10,000 square feet, so 2,500 square feet.
Oh.
For impervious. That's up to the builder at land development. I mean, we haven't gotten there.
Yeah, that's what I was anticipating. What's the advantage to the township that you're going to have 11 homes, I mean, as opposed to 5? I mean, is it a tax thing? Like, why are we approving 11 homes as opposed to 5 and leaving the ordinance? Like, why was there 1,800 square feet originally adopted?
18,000.
18,000 square feet.
There
had to be a reason for that, and that's why we became non-conforming.
The homes, Bill, jump in, that the homes predate our zoning, so they were very small lots when they were built.
I mean, the purpose of zoning is to be consistent. And when the R3 was placed there, this should have been rectified
It's our
years,
district.
well before all of us were even here.
Exactly.
This should have been made its own district. That should you never want to make something non-conforming when you make a zoning change. So when that was deemed R3, all of those houses should have been made conforming with a new zoning district. It should have never been made R3 to begin with not meeting the minimum lot size. So this ordinance actually rectifies that situation.
I think to answer the gentleman's question a little bit more as well, because you're saying that when the 18,000 square feet came about, I think it was a product of the times. You're talking about 1990.
That's for the whole township? The whole township said?
It's for the R3, the residential.
So
when you're talking about trends, you had a trend of when these neighborhoods were built, you had smaller lots, and then at the time that was adopted back in 1990, you had a little bit larger lots was the trend at the time, and now you're going back to a little bit smaller square footage lots in a lot of areas.
Like Dawn Drive, how many square feet? Is that 1,800 square feet?
18,000.
18,000 square feet, piece everything, that's right.
So I think when the zoning, to answer your question, I think when the zoning was passed and why, quote unquote, why, it's hard to look into the minds of the board at that time.
Space. They wanted to not condense stuff in.
Well, it was just, again, it was the product of the trend of building at the time.
Well, that's the point, so we're back into the trend. So if we approve this one here, that means that every other part of this township is going to use this as an example to go back to getting 10,000 square feet. So anywhere there's an open space, like the one adjacent to the bank, or just after Veronica, I believe, that whole big parcel there, they're going to want that same thing, 10,000 square feet, putting more homes in there. And then around the township, I would guess, everybody's going to want to do the same thing. Anybody's going to come and use this model and say, well, we're going to make everything 10,000 square feet.
Well, and that's a legislative decision by the Board of Supervisors.
No, that's what's going to happen. I mean, I'm in real estate, so that's
Well, just to interject again, the one caveat in this instance that's not in a lot of the ones you're hypothetically alluding to is the non-conformity issue as well. Just to put that out there.
Something to consider, because that's going to happen, and that's fine if that's what everybody wants. The height of the homes, I believe in our non-conforming, we can do 3 stories here right now.
Well,
correct?
30 feet. 30 feet, right.
So you can do a 3-story home.
Currently, yes.
Okay, so we won't be able to do that once we go to
2 stories.
Conforming.
Correct.
So we're going to lose potential real estate value if everybody says, hey, I want to put a 3rd story on, let's move up and create more square footage. We will lose square footage. Again, just so everybody knows.
I don't know of a single building permit since I've been here for 13 years and anybody's attempted that here.
Well, it's there for a reason, so it's something, like, I don't know what else we're missing.
Well, it's because it's the R3 district, which is throughout the entire township. It's not just here.
Right, okay. Just one of those pluses. I'm on split level. I don't know what you consider a 3rd story. The lower level is considered entrance level. I mean, what is it? If I want to expand my 3rd...
I'm not a building official. John's here, Andrew's here.
So could you can I expand my 2nd?
You have to address. I'm not.
Would you like to address the question that he just asked?
It's measured from grade.
Measured from grade.
So where's grade? So I have what was the old garage and family room. Is grade where the first main door is?
Yes.
So
everything above grade.
Would be how high?
30 feet.
30 feet would be the new ordinance.
Correct. 2 stories, 30 feet.
or so.
Okay, so I'll bring this up early in here. Yeah, pretty much covered, I guess, what we're looking at. Are there any other restrictions we're going to be under, or any other restrictions that I'm not seeing? We know we're losing a third story. Is there anything else that everybody should know that they would lose on this? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come forward? Yes, sir, come back.
Theodore Robbins. Suburban Village, the houses run 960 square feet to 1,200. Meriwether Farms, they run 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. Now, if they build houses, higher than maybe 3 stories, that's going to be overtowering.
Sir, they can only build 2 stories
Okay.
with the proposed ordinance. 2 stories, that's it.
I just don't like seeing gigantic houses. I mean, Suburban Village has smaller houses in there. And it's nice. I mean, you come in there, it's a great little neighborhood. Like I said, I've been there 40 years. And today, everybody wants a bigger house. Everything has to be bigger and bigger, bigger and higher. So, I don't know. I'm not happy about that, but I know one thing. I don't want to see 3 stories, that's for sure.
Sir, the ordinance requires 2 stories only, no exceptions.
All right, now if they do come out on Isabel, is it going to be, they can only turn right when they come out of there instead of going up through the neighborhood and cutting through all the side streets to get back on Paley Pike?
I'm not sure if we're allowed to do that legally.
Because, right now, I mean, everybody that lives in this township knows how the influx of traffic gets around here. It's unbelievable. And, these neighborhoods anymore, they just keep cutting through there all the time. You have a couple of little major streets they cut through all the time, even where I live at. I'm down Richmond. You might think that's 202 when you drive off that road sometimes, We got kids and stuff like that out there running around.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on to the agenda this evening?
I just have another question. I'm still in a bit of a dilemma around the traffic safety issue of 5 points versus the proposed or exploratory sketch that was shown for the homes that would have an entrance exit onto Isabel. Isabel, the narrow road, doesn't look like it's something that should be putting extra volume in. But on the other hand, having 5 points with the traffic volume that Chief Gleason explained and the speed that we're seeing on that road, sounds like that's not a good option either. So I just want to understand the land development process, working with the developer, that we will explore these options and look at where the entrance exit to this property for whatever development, whether it's a by right development or it's rezoned tonight or whatever, that we will do some study of options around what makes the most sense from both a traffic safety perspective, whether there's an option to, if it does discharge on Isabel, widen, take that corner off and have a couple of left turn and right turn lanes. These things would be explored as part of land development, going to the planning commission, working with developers. That, no matter what happens with the zoning, that's still going to occur, right?
That will occur. That's the burden of the applicant. They'll have a traffic engineer. They'll present not only to the planning commission but before this board in a public forum that information, their studies, their analysis, and their justification for what they're proposing to the public and to this board as far as entryways, exitways, traffic counts, cut-throughs, all of those things. Every one of these questions that has been posed tonight by all of these residents can be posed to the applicant later on in this process. Again, tonight, the public hearing addresses the zoning. It allows the applicant to make application for land development. All of these land development issues, the building envelopes, the heights, the traffic, that's all to be explored and substantiated by the applicant themselves.
So I just would like to make a recommendation for us to post the 2 traffic documents that you read from so that they have a chance to read it more thoroughly and understand it. 2 minutes.
That's it. Maybe
I'll do
one.
30 seconds.
Okay.
This is a supplement.
Just supplement.
Just want to emphasize, the next meeting we're going to be having, I'm sure, is going to be off this property that's adjacent to St. James. I believe that's the road over there for that parcel. So when they decide to sell, so how many homes can we fit into that parcel is what's going to happen, and then traffic coming out to St. James. And then again, just want everybody.
So that's a pipeline right away. There's nothing going to be built there.
Okay, so St. James is further over than from what I'm seeing.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well, whatever that
there's a
parcel is.
large swath of land there that's pipeline.
Right. I've got a pointer, unless you want to walk up and point to it.
Okay, you're talking about this parcel right here?
Yes, exactly.
Pipeline runs right through that. You can't.
So, oh, really?
No.
Okay, so, well then, as an example, once this gets approved, I'm sure this is going to be a litmus test for the rest of the township. Everybody's going to want to squeeze up whatever. So, again, if that's what everybody's looking for, that's fine. But any additional parcel available is going to want to crunch it at 10,000 square feet units. So, all right. I hope everybody knows that.
Thank you. Can we close the hearing?
Sure, so at this time,
Sorry.
Come forward.
Seth Teeter. I was just wondering what rezoning will do for tax rates and how that'll impact your tax amount.
No.
Won't change it?
Your existing parcel doesn't change.
Right, so the lot size that I'm on won't change at all?
Correct.
Won't affect the tax rates at all for individual lots that remain? Okay.
No change.
Good question, thank you.
You want me to say money?
Yeah, right.
Please continue, Mr. Jennings.
assuming there are no additional public comments, we will close the public hearing portion, and it would be appropriate at this time for the board to entertain a motion regarding the pending zoning ordinance text and map amendments.
Any additional public comments before the vote? Board seven.
Fred Mascherino, Veronica Road. Just like a clarification on a question that was asked earlier. The special exceptions and conditional uses for the new R3C, what are they? Are they specifically the same as R3? The special exceptions and the conditional uses that are permitted under the current R3 zoning, what are the special exceptions and the conditional uses for the new zoning ordinance?
I believe there were special exceptions or conditional uses.
So you're saying the new zoning article does not include any special exceptions or special exceptions or unconditional uses?
Yeah.
So that what is permitted under the current code is being taken away by the new code, under those conditions.
The conditional uses that are allowed in the R3 now would be a active adult apartment complex.
Right.
That's a conditional use.
There are several.
I'm going to
There are several uses listed under the R3. Religious or philanthropic uses as a special exception, non-commercial recreational use, and under conditional use, it's independent living facility.
Right, but this is only for those parcels listed in the dark blue. Where would you put any of those uses currently? They're all single-family homes. You'd have to tear down a bunch of homes to put it in.
I'm sorry, there is property available there that can be developed for other uses other than residential.
Where exactly, sir? Could you put that up?
Right where you mentioned that a pipeline cannot be built, and that's not a correct statement. You can build on property as long as you have the easement for the property of the oil line to go through the property.
Our ordinance prohibits building within 100 feet of a pipeline. There's no way anybody could build anything on that property.
I beg to differ.
That's directly from our engineer, so
Okay, well, irregardless of that, I'm asking the question. You're not permitting those special uses or conditional uses under this new article, which you're taking away that is currently zoned for. You're taking away those uses. So my question is, if you're making this change, why can't you keep those special exceptions and those conditional uses in the new article as they are existing in the current article?
Well, this would also allow for a prison to be built in the neighborhood under the R3 as a special exception. Religious institutions and non-commercial recreation facilities, which would be something similar to
like an archery club or something, or a gun club, or
like the Roslyn Swim Club
Oh,
is
right.
in the R3 zone district.
right.
So none of these 10,000 square foot lots could house a church. You couldn't build a church on one of these lots.
Exactly.
So it would make zero sense for the township to put something in that would be non-conforming to the ordinance we just passed.
Well, you're just proposing to put in a pocket district, a new zoning in the township. There are properties on here that are over 7 acres. And for that, you can develop more so than residential.
So there are no properties in the zoning district in this blue area that's being indicated in this that are over 7 acres. I walked all 298 properties and posted every one of them. There's not one of those properties 7 acres. The property to the rear is owned by the school district, and the other property has a pipeline.
When I asked resident Mike Andrian how many acres he owns off of Isabel all the way to Paoli Pike.
7.2 acres, you're mistaken there, Mr. Webb.
7.2 acres.
With a pipeline in the middle of it.
Yes.
Correct?
And you are allowed to build as long as you abide by the setback.
Which is 100 feet with the
That's
pipeline
the
in the middle.
challenge.
His property is more than 100 feet.
But sir, you then have to meet all the bulk area requirements to build a building outside of that 100 feet down the middle.
But the pipeline goes within 30 feet of some of the residences on the
Because they're
property.
non-conforming from, how old is that development? The 30s? Honestly, I mean, it's predates everything.
1952.
Okay, so it predates zoning by.
No, the zoning
decades.
existed, it was just different.
Okay. I'm not sure what else we.
Well, I don't think that excluding those things should be excluded from the new article. If you're saying that it can't be done, it should be included, and we'll leave it up to the architect and engineer to develop the final plans on what can be developed on that 7 acres. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we move to number 7, right? Reports?
We're up to reports.
Okay.
If you want to give a recess, if people want to. Maybe 5 minutes.
Sure. We're going to take a 5-minute recess and return.